no nostalgia for catastrophe. I think that's what that means, is that when you leave what's not good, you wash the dust off your feet and you don't look back. And that's a very harsh lesson. It means that there's no excuses whatsoever for not getting up and getting at it. That's what it means. And it means that, it even means that when people are beset with a catastrophe, like let's say the death of their father, that they are prone to use that as an excuse for not going about the business that they should be going about. Because they can say to themselves, well, I would accept. And accept, there's always good reasons. I mean, believe me, there's always good reasons for not doing what you should. That's for sure. The reasons pile up day after day to not do what you should. Especially because you're aiming at things in the future. You can put them off indefinitely, right? Because of the demands of the day. But these stories, they say a variety of things, you know, especially in combination. They say, when you leave somewhere terrible, do not look back. There's no nostalgia. That's the letting the dead parts of yourself go. And then if you're going to follow the good, there's no excuse not to do it. And it means no excuse whatsoever, under any circumstances. And then it's taken even farther with regards to familial relationships. It is, you can't even let them stand in your way. And I think that's all true. And I think I've seen virtually all of that in my clinical practice. Like, there's no excuse whatsoever for not getting at what it is that you should be doing. And I think there's something else that's going on here, especially in the New Testament stories, which is even maybe worse, which is it's absolutely reprehensible to justify your inaction with a catastrophe that extracts mercy from other people. Right? There's a tricky game that's going, well, of course I can't do that. Look at the terrible thing that's just happened to me. It's, yeah, okay, I understand. You're absolved of any necessity to move forward because of your current catastrophe. It's like, well, actually you're not. And it's rather rude of you to use it as an excuse. And it's certainly counterproductive. People say this courage, they talk to me about my courage fairly frequently, and that's not right exactly. I just learned to be afraid of the right thing. And I really mean that. I mean, I saw in endless repetition in my clinical practice and in my own private life, when my eyes were open, the consequences of not saying what was true. It's like whatever hell you might fall into by opening your mouth when you have something to say that isn't popular, it's nothing like the hell that you're going to envelop yourself in if you lose control of your own tongue and mind. And like I said, in my clinical practice, I never saw anyone get away with anything even once. And so all you have in a situation like that is what is the truth. Now, of course, you only have your approximations to the truth, but that's better than nothing. And so you need to be afraid of the right thing, and you should be afraid of contaminating your soul with deceit. That's what you should be afraid of. That will definitely do you in. And I know exactly how. What happens is, garbage in, garbage out, the old programmer saying goes. And so you'll fill your head with nonsense and no one will call you on it except you. But you can still that voice if you try hard enough. You just wait until you get in real trouble. One day there'll come a point where you have to make a decision. And the decision is the difference between life and death, or worse, between someone else's life and death, or worse, between health and the suffering that's worse than death. And because you've compromised yourself to such a degree, you will not be able to rely on your judgment, and you will make the mistake you shouldn't make. And then you're done. And that will absolutely happen. So you tell mistruths voluntarily at your exceptional peril. And you avoid the unpleasant truths that you might have to delve into in all their messiness at your absolute peril and the peril of everyone around you. And so if you see that, you become afraid of that. That's hell. And hell is worse than death. So, and I mean that most sincerely. I bought this cottage up north in northern Canada, and it's very dark up there. And you can go onto the dock at night, and it's dark enough so you can see the Milky Way, and it has to be pretty dark before you can see the Milky Way. And it's very impressive. You know what that's like if you've been out to see the night sky, or maybe you feel the same way when you see the Grand Canyon, or
a remarkable waterfall or some particularly beautiful scene, or perhaps you feel that way in a cathedral, or more likely you feel that way when you're listening to music that really grips you, right? And it's all the same experience. It's an experience of awe, and it's way down low in your nervous system like the orienting reflex. It's not a cognitive response precisely. It's a precognitive emotional response that signifies significance. And you look up at the night sky, and it fills you with a sense of awe. But it doesn't just do that. You see, it activates the impulse to imitate, which is a very deep motivation in human beings. We're unbelievable mimics. We mimic each other all the time, which is why we all use the same words, let's say. We're very good at embodying other people's embodiments. It's a particular talent that human beings have, and we're so good at that we imitate all sorts of things that aren't even human. And so then you view this expansive night sky, and a sense of awe fills you as you confront the infinite. And it calls to something inside of you that can master the infinite. And that's a form of imitation, right? To look into the darkest place, the most wide expanse possible, and to have something inside you respond that's capable of dealing with that. That's that instinct to imitate. And that's calling the best out of you. And that's why you love doing that. And it isn't just that you love it, it's that you cannot live without it. You cannot live without it. And I know so many of you, atheists or otherwise, you can't live without music. You think, why can you not live without music? What is it calling to precisely? You know, that remarkable interplay of harmonious patterns. Because that's what music is, and that's what the world is. It's not objects, it's the harmonious interplay of patterns. And music reflects that, and then you orient yourself in your embodied manner to those patterns and dance along with the world. And that revivifies you. And if you're particularly good at it, well, maybe you'll also attract a mate. And you want a mate that doesn't attempt to dominate you sexually during the introductory dance, right? You want a mate who will play along with you and match your movements to theirs so that you can see that there's a harmonious interplay between the two of you as you meet in play, soul to soul, if you can manage it. You know, the existential psychotherapists in the 50s, taking a page from Heidegger, talked about thrownness, right? The arbitrary nature of our existence. I mean, here you are, you have the ethnicity and race that was bestowed upon you. You had no choice in that. You're the victim and the beneficiary of this particular historical moment. You know, you're the victim and beneficiary of all the atrocity and the wonders of the past. You deal with your own emotions. You deal with the fact of this specific time and place, all of that. And there is a sense of, well, there's a sense of mortality, certainly, that's associated with that, with finitude and mortality. And you can easily say, in some sense, that we're all victimized deeply by our own susceptibility to vulnerability and tragedy. And I think that's true. But then the question is, well, what's the best way of dealing with that? And falling prey to it. When my daughter was young, she was very ill. And one of the things we told her repeatedly, and which I think she did very well to her credit, was often she was too ill really to be able to go to school because she couldn't wake up in the morning and she was in pain. But she needed to go to school. And well, one of the things we told her was, don't use your illness as an excuse, right? Because you're already in trouble, kid. You know, you got your problems and they're serious. But if you can hold on to the distinction between the part of you that can, in spite of this, and the part that can't because of it, and not blur that distinction, then that's one more thing you have on your side while you're attempting to struggle through this. And to her credit, she managed that, and quite pristinely, and that was extraordinarily helpful. It was very difficult at times. After she had her hip replaced, she couldn't get around that well. And so we decided to put her in a motorcycle course, which was rather a terrifying thing to do since she just had a hip replacement, but she needed to have a scooter to get around. And so she went with her mother to this motorcycle course, and they were driving motorcycles, not scooters. And at one point, one of the people who was being trained wiped out on the motorcycle, and, you know, it was rather traumatic, let's say. And
she woke up the next day and was too afraid to go to the course. And so we said, well, it's understandable. Why don't you just get in the car and go to the course and see when you get there if you can manage it? And she got herself out of bed and went and managed it, and then she passed the course, and then she had a scooter and could zoom around the city for the next couple of years. And so that was really good. But it was very hard to draw that line, right? Because in some sense, she'd been victimized by this arbitrary illness. And, you tend as a parent to have an outpouring of empathy, the empathy that can destroy under those circumstances, because you coddle the person more than is absolutely necessary, right? And you have every reason to, because they're suffering like mad. But you want to be a victim and be a tragic figure? And you might say yes, but you wouldn't if you thought it through. So, and then if someone asked me that question, say, in a clinical setting, I would do a little analysis of it. It's like, okay, well, you're suffering from this traumatic experience. You want to get over it. We'd have to figure out what the practical steps might be, and that might be finding somebody to talk to, or there's other ways of dealing with it. But you delve into the practical realm to sort of address that.